Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. So I thought I'd just do a quick fleet update because we haven't had one for a little while, and I thought where better place to start than with the old Rover SD1 V8. So if you're fairly new to the channel, this is 1982 Rover SD1 V8. That's my brother's car. So he got this car probably about 8 years ago now, in a sort of running state where it needed a bit of work. He drove it around for a little while and then fully nut and bolt restored it. So he finished that about a year ago, but to say the fact it doesn't really want to go back on the road is a bit of an understatement. So every time he gets close, and closest we got, because it's still not MOT exempt yet, was last year, to it having an MOT. It decided that it would then develop another running issue, whereby it would sort of almost starve itself of fuel when it got hot. So the story of this car goes back a bit, but we will do a sort of more in-depth when it is finally up and running. But basically, it's had a complete new engine, engine rebuilt with new high lift cam in it, so it revs faster. It's got high lift tappets in it as well, hydraulic tappets. So Ryan put it together, went back, putting it on the road. To put it on the road, there was then lots of running issues with it, so we had the carbs rebuilt, various things, fuel pump redone, and then these cars have a circuit that goes through the oil switch on these early Series 1s, which this is, that basically almost stops it running. It's sort of a fail-safe, so if it thinks there's something wrong, it will stop the car running, so you don't damage the engine should you lose oil pressure, which is all well and good, but these circuits were notoriously iffy from new, and obviously sort of 30 years plus on, even though it's been rebuilt, it's had new oil switches, there's something still not quite right in the wiring, so we think that's actually the issue, which is this oil pressure switch is actually causing it to run very lean and then effectively cut out. So Ryan's next plans for it are to actually bypass it, because he's tried replacing the switch with no sort of benefits, so we think there's something wrong in the wiring somewhere. So yeah, that's going to be the next stage for that, and that will hopefully be this summertime. Ryan has very much of a love-hate relationship with this car, given he spent a lot of time, effort and money on it, and it's every time we get so close to it being on the road, something else happens, and you just lose sort of all momentum and enthusiasm for the project, to the point where he's actually thought about selling it, but I keep trying to persuade him not to. So yeah, so the old troublesome SD1 is just sat waiting its turn for the minute. We've got other things that are sort of skipping the queue, so it sort of sits here in the garage and is sort of nicely protected from the weather conditions. So other members, if I turn around without making you sick, so the Renault 21, that's also Ryan's, that he bought, I think it was on the last lockdowns. So it's gone through various things. It wasn't as good a car as was originally advertised, and again, this is the problem with distance buying, because obviously at the time you couldn't go anywhere to purchase a car, so you were reliant on the eBay advert if you were, and then you obviously had to get it couriered to you. So yeah, it's had Ryan spent a lot of time on it, getting it just right. It was at Festival of the Unexceptional last year, and got quite a good sort of welcome, really. Lots of people were very interested in it. Had a few issues on the way to Festival of the Unexceptional. The wiper arm linkage decided it was going to come off its spindles, so the wipers jammed, which when it was raining was a bit of an issue, but we managed to limp back in between showers, and Ryan has since put a new linkage and mechanism in there, so that's all right. Then, also on the way back, there was an issue where I think it was going into sort of fourth or fifth. Something had dropped down underneath the gear selector, and it was basically making it hard to get into gear. But again, you fix that, so that's sorted. And then the final sort of nail in its coffin, which is why it's round here at the moment and sort of awaiting its fate, either to be repaired or to be sort of passed on to somebody who has the time, is one of the bodges we found. Ryan had heard it clunking going round roundabouts, so we assumed it was a suspension component, and brother's very up on his servicing, so he was doing disc and pads on it, as you do. Sort of went to do the passenger side sort of round here, and noticed that the front subframe, that's essentially that holds the engine into the car, some have a notorious habit for rusting out on these anyway, and this particular car we think had been sat in somewhere very damp for quite a while, so it is quite rusty here and there. So it was moving, but it wasn't just the whole bush that was moving. It was you could see somebody had attempted to weld the bush, or what was left of the metal surrounding the bush, back to the subframe, which also didn't have any metal in it. And then what they decided to do to sort of cover it up and get it through an MOT at the time was, we assume this was at the time, was to basically filler it and then paint over it. So the clunking was that that had obviously failed after some miles, the welding that was on it, and the whole bush and subframe that suspends the engine were moving up and down. So I think you can appreciate, not ideal. So in today's sort of horrible, gloomy weather, and thanks to, I forget who the guy's name was on the Hubnut live chat, actually suggested that there was a scrapyard down in Peterborough, down in Lincolnshire, that had some 21s in. Of course, these were quite rare cars anyway, and now are sort of like hen's teeth, especially in this phase 1.7, guys. And it has to be a 1.7 because the 2-litre engines use a completely different subframe. So Ryan's actually headed off down there in the horrible rain this morning in the hopes of getting one. So I'll keep you updated with that, and we'll see if he did actually manage to get one, because really, looking at the subframe that's in it, it's not ideal, and we don't know how much of it will be left when we actually take it out of the car to see if there's anything you can repair it to. So the ideal, and for quickness as well, is to have another subframe that's in better condition, that you can just pull the engine out of the car and then put the subframe in and then put the engine back in. So we hope that'll be the case, because it's a local car to the area we're in as well. So and we've got a couple of those with the Mark 1 Mondeo that I recently did a video on, which, if you look, is back in my sort of catalogue. So we hope that we can get this back on the road. Ryan's got the Mark 1 Mondeo now, as well as his Tomcat, which we'll go and have a look at in a moment. So we're sort of not quite sure where this fits at the minute. I like it, so it might be a case of I might buy it off Ryan if it's repairable and we can get it through an MOT. Alternatively, we've had some interest from people that were at Festival of the Unexceptional last year, so it might be a case of just finding somebody who has got the time to do it and get it to where it is, because it's a nice car and the thing just floats. It's just so nice to be in, and now we've got all the sort of gremlins out of it. It'd be a shame to sort of see it go, but when you've sort of got multiple projects, as you'll see, it's quite hard when you're working as well to sort of get the time, and I'm sure other people sort of feel that as well. So that's sort of round the back, hiding out the way. So we'll head out the front, and I'll just take you through what's happening with a couple of the other fleet members in a second. So join me again. So here we are, sort of, I've saved you me walking from back to front, but so we've sort of come out of the front to look at the projects that are currently sitting around here. And yeah, so I thought we'd start with the Hillman. So again, in my back catalogue, it explains a bit more about what this car is and where Ryan got it from. But it's a 1965 Hillman Super Minx. Eagle-eyed for a view that was probably spotted from here. It's a left-hand drive from factory. So this car spent a lot of its life in Europe from new, and was brought back to the UK as part of a deceased estate sale. My brother at the time was working for a classic car restorers, and it was a customer of theirs who'd brought this back as part of his family's deceased estate sale and didn't know what to do with it. So my brother decided to sort of put it back on the road. So at the moment it's in careworn attire, as you can see. It's MOT and tax exempt, so we're not people that will just throw something back on the road and drive it because of that. So there's a few things that need to be done on it. So Ryan's converted the electrics. It's gone from a dynamo to a alternator now as well, so that helps. He's had to redo the wiring because at some point somebody fitted the battery the incorrect way and fried a lot of the wiring with it. But the reason why it's wheels off at the moment, you can see the somewhat not archaic suspension, but suspension for the time of year. So leaf springs on the back to a live axle. So the reason why it's actually off is part of it's got a leak from the rear axle seal of oil. It's not much, but Ryan wants to get it off, and he's got the seal to repair it before it goes on the road. So again, what we'll also do, it's had new brakes, new brake lines, everything like that. It'll have a thorough check over before it goes on the road, because as I say, we're not the sort of people that goes, oh great, it's MOT and tax exempt, I can drive any pile of rubbish on the road. It's not about that. So it's got to be safe for us and anybody you might encounter while you're driving it. So let's just wait for that. Ryan did start it but got stuck with trying to pull the shaft out of it, and actually broke a puller that we'd bought, so it's welded in there. So he's going to fabricate something to enable him to pull that off and then replace that seal. But it does live outside because, as I say, the paintwork is careworn. You know, it lives its sort of years basically, and it was a used car. The alloy wheels are not standard, but we're not going for standard on this car. We think it looks quite good with them. So that's that. We'll pass over towards the Tomcat next. So again, this car's been on the channel, featured a few times. So it's a 1994 on an L, I think, 216 Tomcat. So it's the 1.6 Honda engine. So we bought this again in the first lockdown. Literally it just ran out of MOT. We did an oil and filter change on it, stuck it for an MOT, and it flew through, surprisingly. Brian then did about, I think, sort of 18,000 miles in it before he took it off to do some remedial work on the suspension, and then the engine decided that was enough at that point and started smoking. So what he managed to source was a 216 GTI from a Rover engine from a Rover R8. Pretty much the same engine, but you got more horsepower, and rather than single cam 16 valve, it was twin cam, and so that's actually now fitted into this car, so it gives it a bit more poke. At the moment, he's obviously, when we got it, somebody had attempted their lockdown painting. It had various horrible white stripes across the bonnet, and somebody had wrote Tomcat in it, and all that sort of thing. So Ryan's tried his best to sort of strip all that back and take that off. So it's pretty much back to how it was now. The paint has been ruined through various people touching it up, and just through the ages, really. So what he's actually doing at the moment is, the plan for this car is to take it off the road now we have the Mondeo, and actually have it properly resprayed. So he's hoping to get some quotes for that fairly soon. A couple have come through, but they were, shall we say, very high. I'm probably going to cut this one short because it has just started chucking it down. I'll do something more in the RCZ later. That's mine. That's actually leaving the fleet soon. So I'll probably do a roundup of that, but that will be leaving the fleet. The Corrado's still here, so I'm planning to get that in for an MOT sort of in the next couple of weeks and get that through, and then start doing some more work on it. And old Hannibal the Super is still sat outside there. So yeah, it is absolutely chucking it down now, so I'm going to head indoors. But as always, thanks for watching, and do like and subscribe, and see us again soon. Thanks for now.